Times podcast.
Epoch Times Online. I'm Rich Crankshaw. Here's what's making the headlines in today's Epoch Times newspaper and online at theepochtimes.com. Today's news date, December 18th. The Yemeni defense minister says 34 suspected al-Qaeda members were killed and 17 more arrested by government forces on December 17th. Air forces and troops attacked what the Yemen officials claimed to be the al-Qaeda training camp in the Abyan province. Residents and human rights groups say many civilians were also killed during the operation. A local human rights activist said there was no al-Qaeda training camp in one area, but 64 people were killed, including women and children. Elsewhere near Yemen's capital, government forces killed 4 militants who allegedly planned suicide attacks against Yemen targets, including schools. After a day of heated debates between 193 world delegates in Copenhagen, there seems to be a will for compromises on the part of the biggest emitters, the United States and China. However, the desired goal of keeping a rise in temperature below 2 degrees Celsius might not be achieved, according to a leaked document from the UN Climate Convention Secretariat. The talks resumed on Thursday after a block of 24 hours caused by poor countries' disagreement with the compromise text proposed by Danish Prime Minister. The United States said they will not agree to concrete gas emissions cuts unless China follows suit. The United States urged the Chinese regime to act in a transparent way. U.S. President Barack Obama, whose country is the second biggest gas emitter in the world after China, is expected to arrive in Copenhagen Friday morning. Earlier, he proposed 3% of 4% lower emissions by 2020 than in 1990, which is also 17% lower than 2005 levels. U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton declared a willingness to cooperate with other countries and to mobilize $100 billion per year by 2020 in order to aid developing countries. Germany and Spain announced on Thursday they want to reduce deliveries of H1N1 vaccines as a result of low turnout for the shots. Officials from the Ministry of Health expect a surplus of vaccines will be returned to suppliers in order to be sold at pharmacies, according to a Reuters news report. In total, Germany ordered 50 million and Spain 37 million doses of vaccine. A planned strike by British Airways cabinet staff during the Christmas period has been declared illegal by a high court ruling on Thursday, rendering the strike unable to go ahead. British Airways filed a complaint saying the organized union, Unite, had problems with its ballot, including around 1,000 staff who were not working at the company anymore. The strike, which was planned to go from December 22nd to January 1st, could have affected up to 1 million travelers. Pakistani President Asif Ali Zardari is facing pressure to resign following a Supreme Court ruling declaring an amnesty protecting him illegal. The 2007 National Reconciliation Ordinance had blocked corruption investigations of Zardari and other officials. Pending cases previously covered under the amnesty will not be revived. Mexican special military forces killed one of the country's most wanted drug lords Wednesday evening, officials said. Known as the boss of bosses, Arturo Beltran Leyva was killed after a 4-hour gun battle between military forces and cartel gunmen. 4 suspected drug traffickers and 3 Navy forces were killed in the fight. Mexican President Felipe Calderón has deployed around 45,000 military troops across the country in an attempt to crack down on the influence of drug traffickers. 2 former Khmer Rouge leaders have been charged with genocide at a UN-assisted tribunal in Cambodia. The 2 men were high-ranking members of the Maoist regime ruling Cambodia from 1975 to 1978 under the rule of Pol Pot. In 4 years, the Khmer Rouge killed more than 2 million people in Cambodia, which at that time had a total population of just over 8 million people. Pol Pot had been to China 4 times to listen to Mao Zedong's teachings in person. After returning from China, he changed the name of his party to the Cambodian Communist Party. Epoch Times' Reggie Littlejohn writes, "The whole world needs to adopt China's one-child policy." That's a quote from syndicated columnist and mother of 2 Diane Francis, who argues a planetary law such as China's one-child policy is the only way to reverse the disastrous global birth rate. This statement comes from her article, The Real Inconvenient Truth, appearing December 8th in the Financial Post. According to a congressional testimony, China's one-child policy causes more violence against women and girls than any other official policy on Earth. China controls family sizes through forced abortions, forced sterilization, and infanticide. When people in St. Louis can no longer make ends meet, many turn to the New Life Evangelical Center. Although its headquarters are in St. Louis, the New Life Evangelical Center has additional centers throughout Missouri, Illinois, Arkansas, and Kansas. Reverend Larry Rice founded the NLEC in 1972. Almost 4 decades later, Rice still dedicates his energy to the community he serves. He's a religious man who lives his faith. Rice says to minister means to serve, adding his services are open to everyone. True to his word, Rice continues to expand his organization to meet the needs of people well beyond his St. Louis office. What began in a 50-foot rented trailer now includes overseas missions in India, Nigeria, Mongolia, Haiti, and the Philippines, in addition to the U.S.-based centers. You can read all about it in today's Epoch Times. William Kaczynski's story titled "St. Louis-Based Shelter Offers New Life." Captain David Patrick has been with the 425 Squadron at 3-Wing CFB Bagotville, Quebec for only 6 months, but the 10-year veteran aviator has already received a plum assignment. He's one of 4 fighter pilots from the Canadian region of NORAD selected to escort Santa Claus on Christmas Eve, as St. Nick and his famous reindeer fly across Canada delivering presents to children. As Santa nears Western Canada, Lieutenant Colonel Sean Penny and Captain David Chamberlain of 4-Wing CFB Cold Lake, Alberta will intercept and escort him. Santa typically flies back and forth across the Canadian-U.S. border, said Patrick. While flying in the United States, American NORAD fighter pilots in either F-15s, F-16s, or F-22s get the thrill of flying with Santa, he said. Patrick has been briefed. Santa flies very, very fast. We don't know the top speed of his sled. We do know that it is faster than we can fly, but he does slow it down so we can intercept him and escort him. 4 years in the making and based on visions James Cameron had years ago when he was a truck driver, Avatar transports you to another planet in such a realistic fashion that you literally have to pinch yourself to remember you're not one of the Na'vi. The Na'vi people, deeply spiritual and connected to their environment, remind us of the Native Americans who had their lands taken and often polluted. Pandora, described by Cameron as the Garden of Eden with teeth and claws, is so painstakingly detailed and imaginative it's almost difficult at times to focus on the central story. Cameron himself dreamed up the terrifically captivating landscape, flora, and creatures that he brought to 3D life in Avatar. Avatar opens nationwide today, and you can read the full review in today's Epoch Times. Today in history, December 18th, 1898, an automobile speed record was set, 63 kilometers, a blistering 39 miles an hour. December 18th, 1966, Dr. Seuss' How the Grinch Stole Christmas airs for the first time on CBS. December 18th, 1976, A Star is Born with Barbra Streisand premieres. December 18th, 1980, Vietnam adopts the Constitution. And finally, director of blockbusters like E.T., Close Encounters, and Jaws, Steven Spielberg, born today, December 18th, 1947. In today's Epoch Times sports page, after Wednesday's 2-1 loss to the New York Islanders, New York Rangers head coach emphasized the fact changes had to be made. The first change came Thursday morning when defenseman Wade Redden walked into the locker room and saw he had been scratched from the lineup. He was clearly upset and confronted Tortorella in a loud discussion, as reported by MSG. Forward Alice Kordelik, who hadn't scored in 15 games, was also benched. It was a good thing for the Rangers as they rebounded and beat the Islanders 5-2 at Nassau Coliseum on Thursday night. The New York Giants, with practically no margin for error, visit FedEx Field to take on the Washington Redskins this Monday night. The Giants are coming off a disappointing loss to the Philadelphia Eagles, while the Redskins will be trying to build some momentum after last week's 34-14 win over the Oakland Raiders. Washington may be the doormat of the NFC East, but they have been playing very well lately. The Giants, on the other hand, have been slumping ever since their 5-0 start, and the defense has been hampered by poor execution. Those are some of the stories making the headlines in today's Epoch Times newspaper. To find out more about these stories and other important facts, pick up a copy of the Epoch Times newspaper or go to the web at theepochtimes.com. Until next time, for Epoch Times Online, I'm Rich Crankshaw.
Epoch Times.